Welcome to the very first episode of Faith, Life, and Everything in Between. I am Willie Shan, and I'm so glad that you've decided to spend a little time with me today. This podcast is about faith, life, personal growth, purpose, encouragement, and all of those things that happen in between. We're going to have real conversations about the things that you and I experience every day. We're going to talk about faith when life is going well, but we're also going to talk about faith when life is difficult. We're going to talk about purpose, disappointment, fear, relationships, motivation, our thoughts, our decisions, and what it means to trust God in the middle of it all. And today, I want to begin with a topic that I believe almost everyone can relate to at some point in life. And that is when God says, wait. Have you ever prayed for something and expected God to answer immediately or quickly? Maybe you prayed for new opportunity. Maybe you've prayed for a relationship. Maybe you prayed for healing in a situation. Maybe you prayed for financial breakthrough. Maybe you've been asking God to open a door. Maybe you're waiting for direction about what you're supposed to do next. And you've prayed. You've waited, you've prayed again, you've waited some more, and eventually you find yourself asking, God, how long? God, when are you going to answer me? God, did you hear my prayer? God, am I supposed to keep waiting? And sometimes the hardest answer from God is no. Sometimes the hardest answer is wait, because when God says no, at least you know the answer. But when God says wait, you're living in the space between promise and fulfillment. I tell you, you're standing between where you are and where you believe God is taking you. And that place can be uncomfortable. But today I want to give you a different perspective on waiting. What if waiting isn't wasted time? What if waiting is actually part of the process? What if God is doing something in you while you're waiting for God to do something for you? Do you get it? Waiting doesn't mean God has forgotten you. Let's begin with something very important. Just because you're waiting doesn't mean that God has forgotten you. Sometimes we make the mistake of measuring God's presence by how quickly our circumstances change. If things aren't changing, we think God isn't working. If the door hasn't opened, we think God isn't listening. If the answer hasn't come, we think God has abandoned us. But God's silence is not necessarily God's absence. There are things happening that you cannot see. Think about a seed planted in the ground, right? You put the seed into the soil, cover it up, and then you look at the ground the next morning. Nothing happens. You look again the next day, still nothing happens. You may look a few days later and think nothing is happening, but underneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are developing, the seed is beginning to grow. The fact that you cannot see the process doesn't mean there is no process. Understand this. I'll say it again. The fact that you cannot see the process doesn't mean there is no process. And sometimes your life is like that. You're looking at the circumstances and saying, nothing is happening. But God may be doing work underneath the surface that you cannot see. Let's take a look at Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 31. It says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." Notice everything about this verse. It doesn't say that waiting means doing nothing. It says that those who wait on the Lord renew their strength. There is something God can develop in you during the waiting season. Waiting can develop your character. One of the reasons we don't like waiting is because waiting reveals things about us. Okay? Waiting reveals our impatience. Reveals our desire for control. Waiting reveals how quickly we become discouraged. Waiting reveals whether our faith depends on what we see. And that can be uncomfortable, but it can also be very valuable to you. Imagine asking God for greater responsibility. You might say, "God, I want to lead. I want to make an impact. I want to help people. I want to do something meaningful." But sometimes, before God gives you the opportunity, He develops the character necessary to handle the opportunity. Because the blessing you're asking for requires preparation. You may be asking God for the platform while God is preparing the character. You may be asking God for the opportunity while God is developing your discipline. You may be asking God for influence while God is teaching you humility. You may be asking God for change or to change your circumstances while God is changing you. And sometimes the waiting room is actually a classroom. Don't waste your waiting season. Here's something I want you to remember. Do not waste your waiting season by spending all your time wishing you were somewhere else. If you're always thinking, "I'll be happy when," or "I'll be happy when I get this job. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when my finances improve. I'll be happy when this situation changes. I'll be happy when God finally answers my prayer." You're spending your entire life for the next season while missing the reason you're currently living in. I'll say that again. You're spending your entire life waiting for the next season while missing the season you're currently living in. There is something God wants you to learn today. There is something you can do today. There is someone you can encourage today. There is a responsibility in front of you today. There's an opportunity to grow today. Don't become so focused on the destination that you fail to appreciate the journey. Waiting doesn't mean sitting still. Now, let me clarify something. When I say wait on God, I'm not telling you to sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing. Biblical waiting is not laziness. Waiting doesn't mean you stop preparing. Waiting does not mean you stop learning. Waiting does not mean you stop working. Waiting does not mean you stop growing. Waiting means you continue to trust God while you remain faithful with what is in your hands. If you're praying for a job, keep applying. If you're praying for your business to grow, keep learning and improving. If you're praying for your purpose to become clear, keep developing your gifts, and we all have gifts. If you're waiting for the right relationship, become the person you want to be in that relationship. If you're waiting for an opportunity to speak, prepare your message. If you're waiting for your book to reach people, keep writing. If you're waiting for your ministry to grow, keep serving. Don't confuse waiting on God with waiting around. That's a big difference. Don't confuse waiting on God with waiting around. There's a difference. You can wait patiently while still moving purposefully. Ask yourself, what can I do today? Here's a practical question I want you to start asking yourself whenever you find yourself in a waiting season. What can I do today? Not next year, not when everything is perfect, not when God gives you the complete answer. What can I do today? Maybe today you can make the phone call. Maybe today you can submit an application. Maybe today you can read a book. Maybe today you can improve your skill. Maybe today you can apologize. That's a big one. Maybe today you can forgive. Maybe today you can pray. Maybe today you can encourage someone else. Maybe today you can take one small step toward your goal. And you don't need to know every step. You just need to be willing to take the next step. Don't let waiting turn into worry. Another danger of waiting is that waiting can easily turn into worry. We start with, God, I'm trusting you. Then a few days later, God, are you sure? A few more weeks pass. Maybe I need to take control here because you're not doing anything, God. Then we start making decisions out of fear instead of faith. We begin forcing doors open because we're tired of waiting for the right one. And sometimes we create problems because we refuse to wait for God's timing. There's a difference between taking initiative and forcing something that isn't ready. Ask yourself, am I moving because God is leading me, or am I moving because I'm afraid nothing is going to happen? That's an important question because fear will make you rush. Faith will teach you how to move with wisdom. God's timing may be different from your timing. Okay. One of the hardest things about faith is accepting that God's timing may not look like yours. We often pray with a schedule. God doesn't work on a schedule. A matter of fact, He doesn't work on our schedule, He works on His own schedule. God, I need this by Friday. God, I need an answer this month. God, I want this to happen this year. But God doesn't operate according to our deadlines. And that doesn't mean He doesn't care. It means He sees things we don't see. Think about how limited our perspectives can be. We see today. God sees the beginning, the middle, and the end. We see the opportunity. God sees consequences. We see what we want. God sees what we need. We see the door. God sees what's behind the door. I'll repeat that again. We may see a door, but God sees what is behind that door. That's why trust is necessary. If you could see everything God sees, you wouldn't need faith. And that's the whole point of having faith. Faith becomes important precisely because you don't have all the information. You just don't. Proverbs 3, verses 5 to 6 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts and lean not on our own understanding. That can be difficult, and I know, speaking from my own experience, because we like understanding, we like explanations, we like timelines, we like guarantees. But sometimes God gives you directions without giving you every detail, and that's where faith comes in. What should you do while you're waiting? Hmm, that's a good question. Let me give you 5 practical things you can begin doing today. Number 1, pray, but also listen, okay? Don't make prayer only about telling God what you want. Prayer is a conversation with God. You're praying, He's listening, He's speaking to you, and then you have to listen to Him. Prayer is also about becoming quiet enough to listen. I'll repeat that. Prayer is also about becoming quiet enough to listen. Sometimes we spend 20 minutes telling God what we need, and then we immediately get up. Give God room to speak to your heart through scripture, wisdom, reflection, and godly counsel. Ask, Lord, what are you teaching me in this season? Is there something I need to change? Is there something I need to release? Is there something I need to prepare for? Is there something you want me to learn? These questions can change your waiting season. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, work on what is within your control. You cannot control when someone else changes. You cannot control how quickly an opportunity comes. You cannot control another person's decisions. You cannot control everything that happens in the world, but you can control your response. You can control whether you continue growing. You can control whether you choose bitterness or forgiveness. You can control whether you continue learning. You can control whether you keep showing up. Focus your energy on what you can control. Number three, stop comparing your timeline to someone else's. This is a big one. This is huge. You may be waiting for something while someone else seems to be receiving everything you've been praying for. You look at their life and think, why them? Why not me? How did they get there so quickly? But comparison will make you resent a journey that God designed specifically for you. Oh my God, for the people in the back, listen up. Comparison will make you resent a journey that God designed specifically for you. Someone else's chapter 10 does not mean your chapter 3 is a failure. Someone else's blessing does not mean God has forgotten you. Someone else's timeline is not your timeline. Stay focused on your assignment. Number four, prepare while you wait. If you're asking God for something, ask yourself this: am I preparing for it? Because there is a preparation. If God is going to bless you, if God is going to give you something, you need to prepare to receive what God is going to give you. If you're praying for an opportunity, are you prepared for that opportunity? If you're praying for leadership, are you developing leadership skills? If you're praying for a healthier relationship, are you working on yourself? If you're praying for financial increase, are you learning how to manage what you already have? If you're praying for greater influence, are you becoming more trustworthy? Preparation turns waiting into productive time. All right, so that's number four. Number five, thank God before you see the answer. A lot of the times we spend so many time, we pray, we ask God, but we forget to thank Him. Thank Him in advance for blessing you. This might be one of the hardest practices of all. Can you thank God while you're still waiting? Not because you know exactly how things would work out, but because you trust the one who holds your future. Gratitude changes your perspective. Instead of saying, I don't have what I want, you begin saying, God, thank you for what I actually have. Thank you for what I have. Instead of nothing is happening, you begin saying, God, I trust that you're working even when I can't see everything. Instead of how long, you say, God, help me to be faithful while I wait. That's a different mindset. What if God is preparing you? Let me ask you something. What if the waiting season isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? What if God's strengthening you for something? What if God is teaching you? What if God is protecting you? What if God is redirecting you? What if the delay is giving you time to become the person who can properly handle what you're asking for? Sometimes we want the blessing without preparation. We want the harvest without planting. Oh my goodness. We want the harvest without planting. We want the destination without the journey. But growth takes time, and some things cannot be rushed. The tree doesn't become stronger overnight. Character isn't developed overnight. Wisdom isn't developed overnight. Trust isn't developed overnight. Sometimes God uses time to develop what cannot be developed instantly. There may be purpose in the pause. So if you're currently waiting on something, I want you to stop viewing your waiting season as empty space. View it as purposeful pause. Maybe this is a season where you become stronger. Maybe this is a season where you learn patience. Maybe this is a season where you discover something about yourself. Maybe this is a season where you deepen your relationship with God. Maybe this is a season where you prepare something you have not seen yet, right? And maybe, just maybe, when you finally look back, you realize that I thought God was making me wait, but God was preparing me. That's a powerful realization. Your challenge for this week. So, here's what I want you to do for the next 7 days. I want you to identify one thing you're currently waiting on. Write it down. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's an answer, maybe it's a financial situation, maybe it's direction. Whatever it is, write it down. Then, underneath it, write these three questions. What am I asking God to do? What might God be teaching me while I wait? What can I do today to prepare for, you know, just prepare and remain faithful? And every morning this week, spend a few minutes praying. Lord, I trust your timing. Help me not to waste this season. Show me what you want me to learn. Show me what you want me to do, and give me the patience to wait without losing faith. That's your challenge. Not just to wait well. And then to wrap up this conversation, this discussion rather, that I'm having with you today, if you're listening to this right now and you're in a waiting season, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. Your life is not over because something hasn't happened yet. Your story isn't finished because the answer hasn't come. And you don't have to have everything figured out today. Keep praying, keep preparing, keep growing, keep trusting, keep moving forward with what God has already placed in your hands. And when you don't know what tomorrow holds, remember that you don't have to know everything about tomorrow to be faithful today. Sometimes faith is simply saying, God, I don't understand the timing, but I trust you. And every time that's enough for today, right? And sometimes that is enough for today. So if God says wait, don't assume He's saying nothing is happening. He may be saying, I'm preparing you, I'm protecting you, I'm teaching you, I'm strengthening you, I'm working in ways you cannot see yet. And when the time is right, you'll understand why the waiting mattered. Until then, don't waste the wait, use it, grow through it, learn through it, pray through it, prepare through it. And most importantly, trust God through it. Thank you for joining me on this very first episode of Faith, Life, and Everything in Between with Willie Shan. That's me. If this conversation encouraged you, share it with someone who may be going through a waiting season right now. And remember, faith isn't just about trusting God when you have the answer. Faith is trusting God while you're waiting for the answer. I am Willie Shan, and I'll see you next time on Faith, Life, and Everything in Between. Until then, keep the faith, keep moving forward, and don't forget that there is purpose in the journey, and sometimes there is purpose in the waiting.